to his people. Bring to the Lord, O sons of God. Bring to the Lord honor and glory.
Wisdom.
The reading is from St. Paul's letter to the Hebrews.
Let us be attentive.
Brethren, when God made a promise to Abraham, since he had no one greater by whom to swear, he swore to himself, saying, "Surely I will bless you and multiply you." And thus Abraham, having patiently endured, obtained the promise. Men indeed swear by a greater than themselves, and in all their disputes an oath is final for confirmation. So when God desired to show more convincingly to the heirs of the promise the unchangeable character of his purpose, he interposed with an oath, so that through two changeable things, in which it is impossible that God should prove false, we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to seize the hope set before us. We have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul, a hope that endures into the inner shrine behind the curtain, where Jesus has gone as a forerunner on our behalf, having become a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.
Peace be unto you, the reader.
Alleluia. Alleluia. Alleluia.
Wisdom arise, let us hear the holy gospel. Peace be with all.
And with your spirit.
The reading is from the Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. Let us be attentive.
Glory to you, O Lord. Glory to you.
At that time, a man came to Jesus and said, "Teacher, I brought you my son who has a mute spirit. Wherever the spirit seizes him, it throws him to the ground, and my son foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they were not able." Jesus answered them, "Unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him to me." They brought the son to him, and when he saw Jesus, the spirit immediately convulsed the boy, who fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "Often it has thrown him both into the fire and into the water in order to destroy him. But if you are able to do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Jesus said to the man, "If you are able, all things are possible to the one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried with tears, "I believe, help my unbelief." When Jesus saw the crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to him, "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." The spirit cried out, convulsed greatly, and came out of the boy. He became as dead, so much that many said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and raised him up, and the boy stood up. When Jesus entered into the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And he answered, "This kind can come out by nothing except prayer and fasting." They left that place and passed through Galilee, and Jesus did not want anyone to know it. He was teaching his disciples and told them, "The Son of Man is to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and when he is killed, he will rise again on the third day."
Glory to you, O Lord. Glory to you.
Christ is in our midst.
He is now shouting.
What do we mean when we say that? We often, if we had to explain that, maybe we could, but Christ is in our midst. In one way, he's underneath all of creation, going through everything that every human being suffers, because his incarnation from the beginning as a man includes all people, everything from the beginning to the end of time. It's a mystery. He's also in the New Jerusalem at the end of time, the eschaton, where our ultimate journey is. There's a cliche that we all know that says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So we have just a moment of a little spark of pleasure when we hear that, and we forget about it. And it doesn't do much for us usually. And this is a good example of how words are not a change in us. Words come into the mind and then they go out. And when they're gone, we don't know anything that those words were about. And this is a way we can be fooled theologically, because we read a lot of books and we learn things, and for a little while it's in our mind and we think we know something. We think we have arrived, but we haven't. This morning's passage is a good one to remind us of this, because the disciples have worked miracles by the grace of God, but here they are confronted with something in which they're unable to, and they don't understand this. So when they ask Jesus, why couldn't we do that? The link is between believing in Christ and then fasting and praying. In other words, believing's not something you say in your head and, oh yeah, I believe Jesus is who the church says he is, that has no reality for you. It comes in and passes out. This is nothing. This is not faith. This is an illusion. Faith is when the word starts to become flesh and we begin to pay a price to get to the New Jerusalem, to go to where Christ calls us. Then something starts to leaven in us. We are kind of bread, and we have to be leavened. And Jesus says, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. Their mouths flap. They know a lot, but they don't obey. They don't live the faith. So do what they say, but don't be like them. You need a different leaven. This morning, we have a double commemoration of St. John Climacus. His day, his Sunday, always occurs in the middle of the Lenten journey, the 6 weeks fast of special added services and labors. He's right in the middle. And also today is also his commemoration of St. John. And he was a very holy hermit for a long time in the Sinai, and then they called him to be the abbot of the monastery of St. Catherine's. And he had so much wisdom because he had really been obedient to the Holy Spirit for so many years, and he'd given up the ordinary comforts that we have in life to enable him to do this with more intensity. And so they asked him to write something down, and so he wrote The Ladder of Divine Ascent. It's a book that the monastics often read during Lent, and if you get a chance, it would be worth looking at. But I just want to make a couple of comments about it. So it's 30 rungs on the ladder, and you've seen it. You venerated it probably when you came in. You see that there are people climbing the ladder, and there are people falling off, and there are people that are getting shot with arrows by the demons, and there are people being pulled. So testing and temptation is going on throughout this time. Now, how do we experience this? Because according to St. John, for the monastic, the first 3 steps on the rung of the ladder are renunciation, detachment, and exile. This is what the monk is doing. The monk is saying, I'm going to turn away from ordinary comforts. I'm going to turn away from all the things that we do in the world in order to concentrate on Christ. Now, not every monk achieves this for sure. And some of the monks say that you're worse off as a monk in the monastery if you don't actually obey, because then you're like living in a hotel, and it's easier for you than it is for us in the world where we've got to contend with all kinds of difficulties. So that's not a good thing. But if you're a real monk, and what you do is start to do battle with the passions, then you're on a path. But that path is not available only to monks. How do we do that? I'm going to give you a puny little example, one that I'm not proud of, but I will tell you. I got up a little sluggish this morning, and on the way to church, there was a car going very slow as they turned off without their blinker on. And I immediately had, I guess it's one of those things, shooting on the ladder, shooting me off the ladder. And first it was a kind of irritation, and I had a comment come up in my mind, a sarcastic comment. And then I had the imagination, I'm going to ram them and knock them off. And so I let go of all that. But you see, this is how it works. This is how this stuff happens. Now, let's say I didn't just let it go. I don't know where that thing came from. Who knows what that is? But it's not the first time I've had it. The first time I've ever thought of ramming them, I think. But anyway, it only lasted 2 seconds, 3 seconds. But let's say that something like that comes up. And, okay, the sluggishness in my body also tempted me to have a sluggish mindset. It's like, okay, I'm feeling sluggish and all. So now let me identify with that, and then I'll become sluggish inwardly. And then I'll be irritable. And then I might start complaining. And I may want to ram people off the road if they're too slow, because I would be giving in to a type of molasses that seeps through my entire consciousness until it takes me down, down, down. And then goodness knows, this is like flies coming to spoiled food. Then maybe I'm going to have to eat ice cream. And you know, then, I'm tempted to break the fast. And, you know, how many things pile on that start with the opening in our consciousness of one tiny little crack that I don't do battle with. Inside us, we're free to choose what we assent to. So now the question is, where are you going? Where am I going? If we don't know, any road will get us there, and I can ram the car off the road and then go to jail. Well, that's not a good choice, but how do I make choices? What's my gyroscope? What's my plumb line? Well, for St. John Climacus, it's Christ, and that's true for us. Now, what are the practice of the virtues? Now, the practice comes if you're watchful and you see that you're having this thought come into your head, and it's a crazy thought. It's a thought that will get you into a lot of trouble if you do it. You ought to have enough sense not to do that, but sometimes we're in a bad place and we're ready to listen to that thought that comes in there. Well, he says the fundamental virtues are obedience. So we try to do what the church says. That means the church says fast on Wednesdays and Fridays, and you don't have any kind of medical issue that stops that. Do it, because this is obedience to Christ to take you up the ladder, to begin to help you do battle with your inner self-centeredness and appetites. The struggle against the passions. So what are the non-physical passions? Anger, malice, slander, talkativeness. There's one I don't hear many people confessing talkativeness, but I think we should pay attention to that. And I want to hear more of that when you come out. Lord, forgive me for my talkativeness, my blabbing and stuff that's nonsense. Okay. Falsehood and despondency, self-pity. Staying in a place that sucks people into a trap because of feeling sorry for yourself in a selfish way. The physical and material passions, gluttony, lust, and greed. These are the material, the appetites, because they're wired in us. And then the non-physical passions, insensitivity, coldness, carelessness, heedlessness, It's not bothering. Fear, useless worry about stuff. You know, I have people that they want to shoot the TV because they've been watching stuff that's got them so riled up that's their version of wanting to knock the car off the road. But this is crazy, so we don't do this. Vainglory, kenodoxia, empty glory. This is all the ways we imagine ourselves to be something rather than actually being something. Rather than actually being in relationship with others, we imagine ourselves as very special, this or that. It can have both sides. It can be, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I'm a crumb. You know, both of them are imagination, and they're empty. They're a Facebook profile. They mean nothing. In fact, they trap you, because now you've got to live up to your image, whether it's a good one or a bad one. If it's a bad one, you're living up to your image, always being miserable, and everybody has to deal with that. And if you think you're hot stuff, you got to be that way, and everybody has to bow and scrape. We don't want that stuff. So the monks are trying to cleanse themselves of this. Pride, which also includes blasphemy. And pride's underneath everything. You know, in confession, we all ought to really always confess that, because it's always there. All of our sins, the only way I can disobey God is if I take God's place. And in that moment, I'm serving pride. Pride's not, you think you're great. Pride is independence of God. Chosen like Adam and Eve did to say, I don't need to obey God. I can say what I want to do and do what I want. I can go where I want. Yeah, we're free. That's why Christ is crucified. Because he knew that we will do things like this, and he's going to suffer it for us to save us. But when he does that, what he's doing is offering us a love that he hopes will touch us in such a way that we'll do the same thing in return. We'll lay our selfish life down to pick up his loving life. And this is the church. And then the higher virtues are simplicity, humility, discernment, faith, hope, and love. So you can see where the ladder goes. It starts with the recognition that we can't climb the ladder if we're going to serve the self-centeredness of our passions without regulation. If I'm going to give myself to my stomach and become a glutton, actually it's not my stomach. Stomach's not the problem. Gluttony is the problem. The body is never the problem. It's the mistreatment of the body by my refusal to do something about the attacks that I'm under inside and to deal with that. That's where the problem is. The problem is in my freedom at the moment that I see that car turning too slowly and I'm invited to become a self-centered, egotistical, proud replacement for God and let my anger out, get my body going and do something that'll get me in trouble. Every time we have something like that, our freedom is being given the chance to say, are you going to Jerusalem and will you pay the price to go there, or do you want to just be captured by the guerrilla forces of the evil one to enslave you and make you the servant of all kind of perversions of our organic harmony of our body and our mind? That's the question that we're all facing. I want to read you one thing from St. Maximus the Confessor to kind of cap this off this morning. This is from the second volume of the Philokalia, and St. Maximus is really wonderful, very helpful. But his commentary is good on what we're talking about this morning. Here he says, if you fast and avoid a mode of life which excites the passions, and in general do whatever contributes to your deliverance from evil, then you've prepared the way of the Lord. Remember, John the Baptist says, prepare the way of the Lord and make his paths straight. But if you do these things, he says, out of self-esteem or greed or love of flattery or for some other similar motive, and not with a desire to do God's will, not because it is good, because it's intrinsically the life that Christ offers us, then you've not made his path straight. You've endured the labor of preparing the way, but God is not walking on your path. You see, the devil will help us be religious and even moral for the wrong reasons without Christ. This is very important because we do not want to be performers and conformers with an empty soul who are simply building up an ego in religious form. This is very sad, and guess what happens? It's the thing that kills Christ. Who killed him? The religious leaders. The ones that were appearing to be religious, but for all the wrong motives, and they had inner sickness that St. John is saying on the ladder. They were not climbing the ladder. They only looked like they were. St. Maximus also says, if the words of God are uttered merely as verbal expressions, and their message is not rooted in the virtuous way of life of the one who utters them, they will not be heard. They will not be heard. What does the prophet say? These people move their jaws, flap their lips, but their heart is far from me. Those words go nowhere. They're not to God. If they're uttered through the practice of the commandments, in other words, if you put some skin in the game, just a little bit, the sound has such power they dissolve the demons and they dispose men eagerly to build their hearts into temples of God through making progress in works of righteousness. In other words, if the disciples themselves had been living with greater intensity the gifts that they were receiving from Christ, they would have been able to cast that demon out. But they couldn't. And each of us can ask ourselves a question. We have a beautiful faith in the Lord that we give lip service to, but the harder thing is to control the inner place of freedom that says, I will go my way without Christ. And I sometimes don't know I'm doing that. Who is Christ? He's God who lays his life down for you and me. And that's what he's hoping we'll do for him and therefore one another. This is where we're headed, to love. So we need to be honest with ourselves. And I have to say, I don't love much. And I have to have your forgiveness for that, because I injure all of you by my inability to live the faith as Christ calls me and as you deserve. And as I would, on the one hand, I would wish for you, but on the other hand, I'm lazy, slothful, gluttonous. And so it weakens my ability to be a conduit of grace for you. And the same may be true for all of you with one another. So for the church to be what Christ wishes it to be, we have to give up our life for his. That's the call of monastics and in the world.